Well, from a broken website on the internet that's not even working to full enterprise admin with access to full Oracle financial. So we ended up proving that there was quite a few issues, and the deal didn't go through in the end.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Anchors Away. I've been looking forward to this one. Today we have an esteemed friend and colleague and partner of mine, Mike Chamberlain. Mike is the co-founder and CEO of IntegSec, penetration and offensive security services company. I've known Mike for many years. I think we're over 10 years now, right? Since we worked at TrustWave together, Mike,
Yep.
where I started my cybersecurity career.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, I'm Mike Chamberlain. My background actually is quite varied. I started initially doing mostly software engineering, moving software architecture, but always had a passion for cybersecurity. So about midway through my career, I shifted my focus to penetration testing, um, and I earned several certifications before I really got started into it. Um, I joined SpiderLabs as a senior penetration tester, and I was lucky enough to move up there, became a manager, became the practice lead for North America. That's where we worked together, Joe, on delivering great services to our clients, and did similar role at IBM X Force Red, managing a team there as well. And over the year, I learned a lot about what makes a good pen test and a bad pen test. So that's when I decided to start IntegSec a few years ago. The My main philosophy behind this is over the years I've seen a lot of decisions that would hurt the pen tester or their ability to deliver quality results, just because sometimes the business stakeholders don't understand the impact of those decisions. So I founded IntegSec with the philosophy of making it the best place for pen testers to work, because when we do that, they end up giving us the best results. When we get the best results, that's what the customers get. So that's the idea behind IntegSec, is to do things right from the ground up and get good results for clients and make it a great place for pen testers to work at as well.
Mike, tell us a bit about your experience at TrustWave, which at the
Yep.
time, 2008 to 2015 was a very, very well-known, very
Yep.
high-performing penetration test team. Yeah, tell us a bit
Yep.
about that.
Yeah, it was definitely not the easiest place to get in. Actually, I've known about SpiderLabs for a long time. It's always a team I admired. So it was quite exciting to join the team. For me, the way it worked, over several years, I spent a lot of time. I've always been a passionate about cybersecurity. So anytime I had an opportunity to work on, encryption systems or secure communication system, reviewing thing, I would always jump on that. But I think what really helped me break through is I did a lot of certifications like CISSP, Security Plus, Network Plus, A Plus, all these certifications. But I think the OffSec certification from offensive security, having the OSCP, the OSWP, that's really what enabled me to not only learn more, but also show that I'm able to do the things that I claim I'm able to do. And I think that's what helped me get in Spider Lab initially.
Today, would you say, like, is it the same kind of game? Like, do certifications help you get into a cybersecurity career? I go to a lot of cyber events in the Chicago area, right? And meet a lot of young people trying to get their first gig in the cyber. Like, any advice for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, uh, doing bug bounties and having bug bounties to your name proves that you're able to find good ones. Participating in CTF and scoring highs also show that you're able to find bug, which is a good thing. Certification, they're not required. You can be good without having them, but if you have them, you're probably, at least you're meeting a minimum baseline.
Or it's
Nowadays, it's so different than it used to be, because when I was learning, there was very little in terms of book and information. You might, download some text files or e-zine online and read about computer hacking and things like that, but there was not that much around initially when I first started. Um,
I That's actually a point I wanted to bring up, because I have this, I've always had this thought, Mike, that pen testers are, like, some of the most creative people I've ever met, right? Um, which I think is maybe a bit difficult idea for some folks to grasp because they think it's very technical and it's like a
It's
clear-cut path, but pen testers navigate many different things and
yeah,
they will break into something in such ways that maybe perhaps like no one has ever thought of before.
exactly. Yeah,
Do you think the pen testers, not to age ourselves here, Mike, but like the pen testers from your generation or pen testers that are like my age who grew up and learned during the time, like you said, where like there was no text, you kind of just had to figure it out on your own. Like, do they have a leg
yeah.
up on younger pen testers today?
Yeah, I think some of the advantage that we have over new folks starting out, they have a bigger wall to climb because we've been around since much earlier, so we know the history of things and why things were done a certain way. We know the foundation. You know, we were using Telnet and Gopher and PPP dial-ups, and so we understand the history on how we got where we're at and the foundations of the things are built upon. So that is definitely if you're new, you have to just learn it all right away. We got the benefit of learning it a little bit at a time as things were introduced over the years. The other thing too that I think is different nowadays is it's a lot easier to do pen testing, especially with AI. So you can learn a lot faster, um, and things just a lot easier in general. So I think working really hard the way we had to kind of help us develop work ethics that probably would be more difficult to develop today because everything's just so easy. Same thing with, we used to be able to watch a whole movie or, and now we're just watching shorts, right? The attention span is really short. So I'm thinking because things were much harder back then, it probably help us develop ethics that will be harder to develop for new folks now.
What was the what was the pen testing landscape like in 2015? Um, from what I recall, right? A lot of it was dictated by compliance, kind of the same way it is today. Um, at Trustwave, we had a big focus on PCI. So I think the standard was once a year. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but
Yep. Yeah.
that I mean that actually is still kind of considered the standard today because it was dictated by PCI, but PCI also dictated that you would retest your vulnerabilities and make sure that they were remediated. I think
Yep.
once a quarter, right?
Well, we had 4 maintenance tests per year, yeah. So
Yeah.
the annual deep dive and then 4 maintenance, and that was and still, I mean, there's other requirement like the external QSA scans and whatnot, but it does cover, the pen testing requirements. Unless you have major change, then you probably should still do a pen test, but if you're pretty stable, that will cover the requirements back then and today.
Did you see folks who were really proactively testing like every major release? Because for me, that was pretty rare. I'm still seeing the same practices today, once a year, dictated by SOC 2 or PCI or some other, ISO 27001, some other framework. What are your thoughts on this once a year pen test? Like, is this an antiquated practice?
Yeah, I think we're in a transition phase right now where it is, but let's speak a little bit about the past first a little bit more. Um, One other thing that always amazed me doing, thousands of pen tests for many, many organizations is that there's no sense or no logic. You would think if you look at a bank, they're going to have really high security. And if you look at, I don't know, widget store, that has nothing really critical, they won't have as much security. But in experience, what I've seen is there's no rhyme or reason. You cannot guess if a company is going to have high security or not just by the type of company they is. There's some banks that go, they're really good, and there's some that are I would never put my money there. So there's just no rhyme or reason behind how much testing folks do, unfortunately. But fortunately, there are organizations that do go beyond compliance, that they don't want to get compromised. They get it, that it's cheaper to test upfront than to wait for the breach that you'll eventually get if you don't test upfront. So there are some folks that do it, just not enough yet. And talking about the transition right now, so the once a year idea was assuming that humans are writing the code, right? And I used to write some really large enterprise application with hundreds of developers, and it would, multi-year projects, and we'd have a few 100,000 lines of code for really complex application. And that would be considered a large pen test done by a human, spending several weeks testing this. uh, but now with generative AI, you can generate that amount of code, just one person, within just a few weeks. So what used to take a huge team to produce can just be produced extremely quickly with Gen AI. And the more code you have, the more bugs you have, and the more bugs you have, the more security issues you'll have as well. So there's definitely a need now to test more often. Because first of all, people will have more bugs, so we need to do more testing. But because of the velocity of the changes that they're doing and how quickly their code base is growing, waiting a year would be like waiting 10 to 100 years just a few years ago. So if you're building that quickly, you need to test more often. And right now, I feel like we're in a transition phase. I saw stats recently: GitHub, about 50% of source code is AI generated. So it's just going to get more and more over time, and things are going to move more, faster and faster. And waiting a whole year's worth of change before doing a pen test is just not going to cut it anymore. And we're probably going to start seeing a lot more breaches and a lot more, and we're seeing them, right? We saw Axios breach recently, supply chain, the Trivia one recently as well. So we're going to see more and more of that, and the testing is going to become more important because attackers are also getting better, just like the bad guys are getting faster. We're getting faster, so everything's going to have to move a lot faster going forward.
The arms race continues.
Yeah, for sure.
The same way it
Yeah,
was an arms race back when we
yeah,
were at Trust Value.
yeah.
It seems like it's escalated even faster now. And I agree with you 100%. Like, um, people are building much faster now. It
Hmm.
takes. I posted the other day that to launch a SaaS business, there's so much. The cost of launching one and the speed of launching one has dropped dramatically, right? So you're saying that because of that, there's likely going to be more bugs in development and things that you
Yeah.
guys would find.
Yeah, there's actual peer-reviewed research on that. I've quoted it in some papers before. I don't remember the exact one, but there's a lot of studies that show the more code you have, the more bugs there are. Bugs, vulnerabilities are just that. They're bugs. They're just a category of bug, right?
Mm.
So it's inevitable that we're going to have more and more, and we need to fight fire with fire. So just having humans trying to keep up with this is never going to work. It's just too much change too fast, and we're already didn't have enough folks, cybersecurity folks, before Gen AI came around. So now I feel like we'll need more folks to keep up with this, and use AI to help us cover more. Because if we use AI tools, we use MCP servers and agents to help us test, we can do a lot of damage really quickly compared to a traditional pen test. So that's what I'm seeing. We're shifting into is, um, a lot more agentic automation and testing, and a lot more coverage, a lot quickly compared to the previous type of testing we were doing in the past.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Dive into that a bit more because I think there's the perception out there that like an agentic pen test or an automated pen test is not as valuable. Um, but what I'm seeing, and I think like what I'm seeing you guys do at IntegSec is you're combining both, right? Walk us through like maybe like the different tiers of the types of tests that a small SaaS company, for example, could execute and the kind of results they get.
Sure. Yeah. So I think if you do an agentic pen test today, your results are probably going to be better than if you got a pen test from one of the big firms just a few years ago. You're going to get better results. Um, it's going to go in depth. It's going to chain things together. It's going to document things better in more detail. Your executive summary is going to have a lot more detail. Um, and I think there's two markets really for agentic pen testing. There's a self-serve market for the small mom and pop that used to not be able to get a pen test before. Now they can. If I'm a flower shop and I have a small website, I can now afford to do a pen test. It's not tens of thousands of dollars anymore. So it's going to bring that to a new market that wasn't there before. And then I feel like the future for the enterprise is not the self-serve, unless you want to do frequent tests, as part of your build, you could do that. But I think the human expert leading a test using AI agent is where we're at right now. That gives you a lot more coverage, a lot more depth very quickly. Um, so that's where I think we're heading for folks that are already writing with Gen AI. Of course, this is not going to be for everybody. There's some folks that are not going to want to get anywhere close to AI, right? But if you're already building with AI and you're moving at the speed of AI, then it makes sense to test at the speed of AI. For other organization, there's still the traditional pen test, fully human led, either pen test as a service or just a one-off compliance test that are still going to be around for several years, but I think it's going to be less and less, and there's going to be more and more of the agentic pen testing that's very fast and a lot more in depth than the manual testing.
So currently, as I see it, and I think you see the same way, right? Like a human in the loop is still important, especially when it comes to applications that are a little bit more complex. Um, how do you see the future? Will an agentic pen test ever be like a standalone?
Yeah. So right now, I think the standalone thing is good for if you want to test around every build. For example, you can have a GitHub action for a few $100. You can just test on every build and get a good pen test result. If you're a small mom and pop shop, it does make sense to run something fully automated from the outside, from the internet. Now, I wouldn't do a internal network pen test like that, obviously, but from the outside, it does make sense. And then when it comes to internal, like I was just mentioning, we do have exactly that human in the loop solution, Turbo Sim, where you can actually simulate APT, any of the minor attack framework from inside the network, and the human is controlling what's happening uh, as we're testing. And again, for the medium and larger enterprise clients, the managed agentic pen testing is just that human in the loop, controlling everything and directing the AI. And that's really what makes a difference because you could give, my mom an agent and she could like do a pen test and she would get results and they would be valid results. But if I give an expert pen tester the same tool, we're going to get a much, much different result. It's going to be a lot more detailed because the AI will have been guided into where it needs to go and get the best results possible. So that's what I see for the foreseeable future. There's still going to be a human in the loop, and there's still some things that the AI is not that great at doing, like authorization testing. So we don't just let the AI do its thing and then create a report. We actually do testing at the same time, and the AI help us to do more, helps us reporting, and basically get you more results in a small amount of time.
At IntegSec, you guys try to focus on uh, making your approach produce the best results, making it a best place for pen testers to work. Um, Avoiding situations that would impact the ability to deliver quality results. Like, can you talk about that a bit more, Mike? Like, what are things that a technical resource at at a company that's about to be pen tested? Like, what are things that they do that could interfere with like generating the best results?
Actually, one of the biggest, most frustrating things for a pen tester, believe it or not, is a misscope pen test. And
That's it.
if they have a pen test, if it's a huge target and the pen test is really small, they feel like how I'm not going to be able, because they all want to do a good job, they want good results. So if they have something that's too big and the client's expecting we overpromise something, they're not going to be happy. And same with the opposite. If they have too much time for a very small thing, they don't want that. They want things to be scoped just correctly so that they can good result to the client. That would be one example. Um,
How does a test become misscoped? Like,
yeah, I think usually it's probably not been enough discussion about what the test is and what it should be up front. It was just sold without enough communication with the tester. Um, and then, you know, by the time it gets to their desk, it's already a done deal and ready to run.
on scoping, Mike, I've heard scoping is like an antiquated exercise, that there are now AI pen test tools that you just point it at a website and it'll scope everything out for you. Is this accurate? Or
Yeah, no, actually, if you point an AI tool to a code base and give it the right prompt, it's extremely valuable. I mean, it can look at the lines of code, the complexity of the code, the cyclomatic complexity. It also can give you a dump all the routes for the application. It can it can even give you a plan on what to look in what order based on what it sees. So it is very valuable to be able to point a tool and get an idea of what you're dealing with. There are so many different ways to scope pen tests, and nobody's going to agree. So both at IBM and SpiderLabs, we had a lot of debate on the best way to scope and changing how we scope. And do you count users? And do you count users? And do you count URLs? And do you count parameters and all kind of API endpoints? And personally, I like to keep it as simple as possible because it's a starting point. I like to work with lines of code, uh, and there's a tool specifically called Clock. If you run it against your code base, it'll give you the amount of code that's actually being run. Then you can filter stuff out, and it really gives you a good sense of, is this a small, medium, or large app? Um, so that's how I like to do it.
got it? Yeah, I mean, I've seen all sorts of scoping conversations over the years, hours spent, APIs, right? General size of the application.
So the important thing here is that no or most compliance standard, they don't tell you the type of testing you need. They don't tell you the size or the length of testing you need. And if you go talk to 4 different vendor about the same web app, one of them will tell you, yeah, we can pen test this in a day. The other one will tell you that's a 3-day pen test. The other one will tell you it's a 10-day pen test.
And
So,
alternatively, that translates into, we can do this for $1,000. We can do
right.
this for 3,000. We can do it
Yeah.
for 10.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
hard to compare pen tests. You have like the you have to know, who's doing it. How long are they gonna take? Are they doing 3 days of testing? Or are they in 2 weeks? Because it's very different. Nobody is gonna find every bug. There's no such thing as a pen test that will remove all risk.
Right.
Otherwise, Microsoft and Google would be buying those pen tests all the time, and there would
Exactly.
be no bugs. Uh, so nobody's gonna find everything. So what you're buying is really the amount of time of coverage you're going to get on your pen test. So
Yeah.
that's a really key thing. And who's going to be doing it? Is it somebody, really qualified, talented, and certified, experienced, and all that? Also, is it going to be done offshore or onshore? We have great people both onshore and offshore. So it's really a business preference as if can you take your do you want some people outside the country working on your pen test, or does it need to stay local within the region? And it'll affect the price, obviously. So if you're comparing a onshore pen test to offshore pen test, you have to consider that. If you're open to offshore, then you should probably shop in that area and compare there. If um, you need onshore, then you should shop there and make sure you're comparing apples to apples, and make sure you have the same duration. Ultimately, almost all pen testing teams use the same, OWASP testing guide, PTES penetration testing standard. and we use the same tool. Almost everybody use Burp Suite. Almost everybody use Nessus Professional, Tenable Nessus Professional. So ultimately, the biggest comparison is, where you're going to get from, how competent the team is, and how much time are they
Which
going to spend
time
on
they're
it.
gonna spend. Yeah.
Yeah.
You bring up a good point with, onshore and offshore pen testers, right? On a 30,000-foot level, folks will say, okay, we want US pen testers only because we don't want anyone outside of the US without US-based background checks or something like that, like to look at their app. It's a business decision, right?
Yep.
It's a risk, it's kind of a risk measurement exercise. Um, but I know, and you know, firsthand experience that we can find really, really good testers
Mhm.
outside of the US, like in
Oh
in
yeah.
in India and Pakistan, the Philippines. There's a lot of talent out there. It's interesting too because I feel today US-based pen testers are, like we mentioned earlier, they learn kind of by the book, and I have an assumption, I could be wrong, but pen testers outside the US did it the old-fashioned way, kinda like you did. They had to teach themselves a lot of this stuff because this kinda education wasn't exactly just easily available at their local university, right?
Yeah, and also they have metered internet a lot of the time. They don't have unlimited internet like we do here. So
I
that
never
that
even
makes
thought
it.
about that. So they have to make
Yeah,
the most out of, like, the access that they actually have.
right. Yeah.
Uh,
So that does make a difference. Well, I say they have metered internet. A lot of our folks, they have fiber, like unlimited fiber, but also a lot of the folks in the Philippines, like while they're growing up and learning and all that, they're most likely on metered internet at that time, while they're learning. So
yeah.
that's definitely a disadvantage from that perspective. But ultimately, I've worked with extremely talented people all over the world, and there's really good people everywhere. And that's the key thing is to when you're looking for people offshore, not to just hire anybody because they're inexpensive. You still have to do the same thing as you're hiring anywhere else. You still have to vet the folks and find people that have the right talent, the right aptitude and attitude to work with your team. And you definitely can find some really good people globally if you're looking carefully.
When did you when did you start seeing, like, the outsourcing of pen test talent? Like, I know at SpiderLabs, like, we had
Yep.
teams in the Philippines, right? But, like, where
Yep.
else, where or when else have you seen this?
I mean, that kind of started early in my career, like before even I was doing pen testing. I was in software engineering, software architecture, and we were out starting to outsource to both India and the Philippines back then uh, to get some help. And then when I joined SpiderLabs, same thing, we were outsourcing to the Philippines.
Earlier, but any further thoughts, Mike, on, like, the future of pen testing and what that could look like? How do you think this is gonna evolve over the next few years?
Yeah, so I think it's going to change fast, right? Because everything keeps accelerating. So for the immediate future, next few years, I think the expert in the loop is still a critical component of a successful program. And who knows, that might be for several, it could be decades. Who knows how long that's going to be? It could be a few years, it could be a few decades that we still need the human in the loop to make these creative decisions. AI is good, it's creative, but to the point of kind of like stealing other people's idea. It doesn't really come up with very truly unique things. So, that I don't know when we'll be able to replace that creativity. Yeah. So all I know is that we're still needed, and basically we just got superpowers at this point. We're able to do way more than we were just a few years ago. So every senior or qualified pen tester can now do way more than they were just a few years ago. So this is good because we get a lot more to deal with now. I think the future is more frequent and shorter but deeper pen testing.
For our listeners out there, if you have any pen test questions or compliance questions, or if you have a pen test that you need to run for your SOC 2 or any other compliance framework, please feel free to reach out to us. I'll drop Mike's email and my email as well. Shout out to TrustWave and SpiderLabs, where Mike and I met. Nothing but love for any of our peers or anyone who worked in those companies. And yeah, thanks everyone. See you guys soon.
Thank you, Joe. Take care.